What is up, everybody? It's 414 Anime here for Anime Uproar, and today we're going to be ranking every captain from weakest to strongest. Similar to our recent video where we covered all of the captain's powers, link to that in the video description by the way, we again have a lot of captains to break down as we are looking at the current captains and the former ones too, so buckle up as we have a lot to get through. Now, if you do enjoy these Bleach videos on the channel and you'd like to see more, you know what to do. Smash that like button, get Suga Tensho style. If you haven't already, make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar. And now without further ado, let's jump into it, spoilers and all. Coming in at the bottom of this list is Lisa. Now, to become a captain is no small feat, so I have to mention here that though she is at the bottom of this list, it does not mean that she isn't strong. Every single member on this list is a master in swordsmanship, Kido, Shunpo, and more. They possess an insane amount of spiritual pressure as well as immense strength, durability, and endurance. Not only do they have raw power, but they have very high tactical and strategic intellect. Lisa rose through the ranks as the once lieutenant of Shunsui to become the captain of the 8th Division. She has an expert mastery of her Zanpaku toe, being able to wield it with both her left and right hand, to which she frequently swaps between during combat. We saw just how skilled she was with the sword when she used her move Senmai Orochi against a Menos Grande, defeating it with absolute ease. She also has her holification powers, which give all her Shinigami powers a significant boost. However, she can only hold her holification for 5 minutes at a time. Now, because of this and the fact that we have only really seen her in fights that she has either been interrupted or she has unfortunately taken the L, she has to be placed here compared to the other captains on the list. But like I said, this does not mean that our girl is not strong. Next up is another of the visored captains in Love Ikawa, the former captain of the 7th Division. Love is an absolute powerhouse. We have seen his crazy strength on hand. And I mean literally. So we saw him take down several high-leveled hollows at the same time. One of which was him putting his hands straight through the mask of a Menos Grande and then completely splitting it in two as if it was nothing. Now, he is arguably one of the most laid-back captains on the list, but this shouldn't be used as a point to underestimate him, as he is very skilled and has a ton of experience behind him. Not only that, but he is a master strategist and has been able to swing the outcome of a battle in his favor many a time. Of course, just like as we mentioned with Lisa, Love gets a very significant boost in power when he takes on his holification. However, he can only sustain his for 3 minutes at a time. Though it is less than Lisa, I do believe that in a one-on-one fight, Love's power would give him the win against her, thus placing him above her. Again, we haven't seen him win against any major opponents. His most noticeable battle was against Stark, to which he and Rose survived, but it was ultimately Shunsui who got the final blow. We also saw him go up against Eisen a little later, but he was just not a match for him at all. Now, I know this guy was only an anime-only filler character, but he was still a captain. Shusuke Aragai was the former 3rd Division captain and one that had so much potential. From what we saw of Aragai, he was just, super impressive. He had a way of leading and rallying those around him. Not only that, but he also had the power to back it up. His Zanpaku toe was a fire type that packed a lot of strength to it. And also it's worth mentioning here that he is the first captain in today's list that possesses Bankai. So we saw in his fight against Ichigo just how strong and experienced he was as a fighter. He had masterful control over his Zanpaku toe and was certainly a powerhouse, but he also had another weapon up his sleeve. That weapon was of course his Bakoto. Now, the special ability of his Bakoto was that it could completely negate a Soul Reaper from their Soul Reaper powers by cutting the connection between them and their spiritual energy, thus meaning that their Zanpakuto became completely useless to them in a fight. Yes, our boy was an anime only, but he was one that I truly loved watching, and a character that I constantly wondered, but what if you were a main captain in the show? Just how much could you have brought to the table? Unfortunately, we will never know, and for that fact, we will place Aragai just here. Now, we were talking of Love's battle against Stark and how he fought alongside Rose, so here he is on the list. Rose is among a select few who were stripped of their powers and captain status, but were later reinstated after Aizen's defeat. Rose being the current captain of the 3rd Division, which is a very clear nod to us that his abilities are up there with the best. Rose has mastered his Bankai, which again speaks volumes of his power and experience. His Bankai is one that allows him to create visual illusions using music, which is a very nasty one to go up against. He also has holification as a Vizard, which will give his powers a huge boost. However, just as Love, Rose can only maintain his Holo Mask for 3 minutes at a time. Now, we have seen him, like the previous 2 Visored captains, make quick work of some very high-leveled holos, which, is impressive. Again, he did fight alongside Love against Stark, but the two were clearly unmatched. And for the start of the battle, he was pretty much just a bystander until he was crushed by some rubble from another battle. He did join in on the fight and survive, but the two certainly struggled, especially against Stark's wolves. Now, we really got to see what he was made of in his battle against Mask. We saw just how impressive his Bankai is, where we saw him use both his Sea Drift and Prometheus abilities. But before we could see the big boy power move, Mask burst his own eardrums, which made Rose's Bankai pretty useless. And he was then hit by Mask's Star Flash attack before being saved by Renji. So, although Rose took the L in his most noticeable fight, the demonstration of his powers and Bankai were more than enough to solidify his place above the previous 2 Visored captains. Ginrei Kuchiki is next up. He was the former captain of the 6th Division over 110 years ago, and though there is a lot about him we don't really know, when it comes to power, I feel there is enough information that gives him a deserved place on this list. So, first of all, we know that he was the 27th head of the noble Kuchiki family, and with that position, we can presume that it comes with a person who is both wise and powerful. Also, the fact that he is Byakuya's grandfather would further aid in our assumptions of his strength. It must also be noted that he was present at the promotion ceremony of the newly promoted 12th Division captain Kisuke Urahara, alongside head captain Yamamoto and captain Unohana, both who are extremely strong captains. Now, we know that one of his greatest strengths was that of his intellect, where he would very quickly be able to determine his opponent's strengths and weaknesses, and then use that knowledge to put together a counterattack. As well as that, Ginrei had a great amount of spiritual energy that could repel even the most powerful of hypnotic spells, and was a very, very skilled swordsman. And though this knowledge of him is little and we never really got to see him in battle, it is clear from his lineage and importance that Ginrei was certainly a force not to be underestimated. Kensei Mukaruma is another Visored on our list who was stripped of his captaincy, later to have it reinstated post Aizen's defeat. Kensei is certainly a very, very powerful Shinigami whose brute power and strength is most noticeably seen when it comes to close combat. We saw him knock Ichigo back a great distance with just one elbow strike, and in the fake Karakura Town arc, we also saw Kensei dispatch multiple high-leveled holos with just his fists. Now, physical hand-to-hand combat is really where Kensei shines, but it's not all brute strength when it comes to his power. But it's his ability to be perceptive while on the battlefield that has often given him the upper hand against his opponent. Now, Kensei does prefer his hand-to-hand combat style, but what makes him extremely impressive is the fact that he combines this style of fighting with his swordsman skills, using the two in union. His Shikai and Bonkai are both very impressive too. He manipulates the wind, utilizing wind slashes and explosions to completely overwhelm his enemy. His Bonkai simply puts this destructive power into two knuckle blades that pack a punch, excuse the pun. And as a Visored, he of course has the same holification powers as the others, which not only boost his Shinigami powers significantly, but also his punches gain more power as his fists are covered in spiritual energy. Kensei can maintain his Hollow Mask for 5 minutes at a time. So I believe of the Visoreds we have covered thus far, Kensei definitely stands above the others as his strength is just insane. He managed to block Wonder Wise's attack and then hurled him a great distance with just one hand before hollifying, and we also saw a good display of his power against Mask. With said knowledge on this guy, he had to take this spot on the list. Kaname Tozen takes the next spot, and I guess you could argue is the first OG captain on today's list. He was the former captain of the 9th Division prior to his betrayal of the Soul Society alongside Gin Ichimaru and Sosuke Eisen. Now, Kaname's powers are interesting. Pre-holification, his powers are all about manipulating his opponent's senses. His Shikai has the power to completely overwhelm his opponent's hearing to the point of them losing consciousness. And his Bonkai creates a space that takes away all of his opponent's senses, bar touch. Of course, it is that sense of touch that is the downside to his Bonkai, as its greatest weakness is the fact that it has touch nullification. We saw this in Kaname's fight against the brute strength of Kenpachi Zaraki. Yes, Kaname's Bonkai is an extremely powerful one, but that one slight opening completely changed the game in that fight. Now, when it comes to Kaname, he has both holification and a resurrection that make him an absolute lethal threat, particularly in the fight against both Komamura and Hisagaya. Kaname was utilizing all of the holification abilities at his disposal, which include the power enhancement and the very high speed regeneration. Kaname was able to go up against Komamura's Bonkai toe to toe while holified, but took the fight to the next level when he unleashed his resurrection, turning himself into a horrid insect-like creature. In this form, Kaname was able to block and crush Komamura's Bonkai's sword and also crack its chest, causing a mirrored injury to Komamura himself. Kaname was certainly a very strong character. Now, if we were to base it off of just his Shinigami powers, I think he would have been a little bit further down the list. While they are very impressive, they also have their drawbacks, but when you add in his holification powers and his resurrection, then he definitely deserves to be where he is on this list, but no higher. Going with Kaname, next up is Komamura, former captain of the 7th Division. Komamura is a very unique captain, not only in his wolf-like appearance, but also in his powers too. Yes, he is of course a master swordsman with expert Kido and Shunpo knowledge, but for me, it's his Bonkai that really stands out above the rest. Along with having clearly one of the best names, Kokujo Tengen Myo is an absolute beast of a Bonkai. In short, he replicates a huge body of living armor that mirrors his moves. This thing has certainly been the difference in a lot of his battles. Now, it does have a downside in the fact that whatever damage the armor giant takes, it also shares with Komamura. However, the flip side to this is that if Komamura were to heal himself mid-battle, the armor giant would also heal, so this downside also has its pros. Komamura is also the first captain on this list that actually has a few big W's to his name in key battles against some pretty big opponents. His first noticeable fight was against Kenpachi back in the Soul Society arc, where he managed to block Kenpachi's strike with his arm and helmet, which led to the reveal of Komamura's true appearance. We then saw him in action against Chao Neng Po, Baragon's largest fraction, where his Bankai completely overpowered him. He managed to send Pao's Zero right back down his throat before destroying him with a single blow of his Bankai's sword. Then there was of course the fight that his character's story had been leading up to, which was against Kaname in the fake Karakura town arc. Komamura's Bankai completely shattered Kaname's left arm with only a single strike. However, Kaname did have the upper hand thanks to his holification powers and his resurrection, but Komamura and Hisagaya did come out with the win in this one. His last battle was against Bambietta, where we got to see Kokujo Tengenmyo Dangai Jo, which was where his Bankai removed its armor, dramatically increasing its destructive power, as well as making it pretty much invulnerable to any physical harm. Now, this form is only possible if Komamura uses the humanization technique, where he sheds his beast form and returns to that of his human one. However, this is at the cost of removing his own heart. Pretty gnarly stuff and one insane power boost with significant consequences. Because of this, Komamura is without a doubt one of the strongest captains, and to this day, one of my favorites. Like I mentioned, he is just so unique and his powers are just an absolute joy to watch. Rukia Kuchiki, the captain of the 13th Division, is up next. We have seen a lot of Rukia over the series as the leading lady of the show, and as such have bared witness to the power that she has and developed over the course of the story. Rukia is a master of Kido, a very competent fighter and an expert with her Zanpakuto. A Zanpakuto that is said to be the most beautiful in all of the Soul Society. She is an ice user similar to Hisagaya, though different in her use of it. Her Bankai, also considered the most beautiful in all of the Soul Society, turns Rukia into a literal ice queen who has the power to control the temperature around her. She can make everything so cold to the point that it is unable to move and even shatter. She has had some great battles over the course of the series and taken a few big W's with her along the way. Her first major fight, I would say, was against the Espada Arañero. A battle that not only showcased what she was capable of, but also one in which we saw emotional growth. We also got to see how tactical she can be when she managed to expose his true form before impaling him with her Sword no Shirayuki. Rukia is without a doubt a strong character, and her Bankai is extremely impressive, albeit for the need to learn a little more control as to not suffer any fatal consequences. Once she has full mastery over that, I am sure she will be much higher on this list. Next up is the commander of the Stealth Force and 2nd Division captain, Soifone. Soifone is a master assassin and an absolute master of her craft. She is very fast and can take down multiple opponents in an instant before even being seen herself. We saw her Shikai in action against Yorichi, which was extremely deadly, especially in the hands of someone as skilled as Soifone. Her Shikai is a poison that will take down her opponent if they are stabbed in the same spot twice by Suzumabachi. In that same battle, we got to see another very impressive ability in her arsenal, which was that of her Shunko. This combines hand-to-hand combat with Kido to deliver some extremely powerful blows. At the time of that battle, she hadn't completely mastered it, but has definitely developed it much further since then. Now, the interesting thing about Soifone and her style of combat is the complete stark difference in her Bankai. A difference so bold that she actually refrains from using it as it damages her pride as the commander of the Stealth Force. However, her Bankai also delivers a lot of damage to her opponent. We first saw it in her battle against the Espada Baragon, and it was just absolutely insane. It is basically a huge rocket that hones onto its target, completely destroying them on impact. Now, in that same fight against Baragon, we also got to see her determination, her will, and her ability to keep calm and collected in the heat of battle, as she lost her left arm but managed to continue fighting against an extremely strong opponent, and most importantly, she came out of that battle alive. Soifone is certainly no joke and very worthy of the titles that she holds, and is only second to one other who will appear later on in this list. Captain of the 12th Division and second president of the Shinigami Research Institute, Mayori Kuratsuchi is up next. And while he isn't really known all that well for his strength, he is certainly a master in other areas, and I think, to be honest, that might be an understatement. Mayori is incredibly smart, as you would expect of the Soul Society's mad scientist. His style of combat is all about extensive research into his opponent prior to engaging them, and then utilizing that knowledge in the form of tactics, feints, and even ambushes. Rather than an all-out brawl, Mayori utilizes drugs and equipment to gain a sneaky advantage over his opponent and completely overwhelm them with his superior intellect. This isn't to say that Mayori can't brawl, but the man is all about results. That's the line of work he is in, and he certainly strives in it. We saw just how well he plans his strategies out beforehand in his fight against the Espada Xayalapodo. He had researched him so well that he knew exactly what moves he was going to pull off and when he was going to do them. Xayalapodo used his voodoo ability in which he can destroy a person's organs. However, Mayori had planned for this by implanting fake organs within himself. Xayalapodo also tried to take control of Mayori's Bankai, but again he knew this was coming and had made countermeasures beforehand. And then the finishing blow was when Xayalapodo had recreated himself within Nemu's body, but Mayori had already placed a few drugs within her that had now fused with Xayalapodo, leaving Mayori disappointed in his adversary, but ultimately this gave him the win. Now, we saw the use of his Shikai and how it complements his fighting style as early as the Soul Society arc against Ishida, where the venom of his Ashisogi Jizo cuts off the brain signals to the limb of where he has stabbed his opponent. His Bankai also utilizes a deadly poison that affects everyone apart from himself. Once this poison is breathed in, it instantly starts to break down that person from the inside out. Mayori is just an absolute mad genius. The lengths he goes to in terms of preparation and his modifications to both his Bankai and himself to create foolproof strategies easily make him one of the most strongest and one of the most terrifying captains in the Gotei 13. The final visored on the list, but easily the strongest of the bunch, and its leader is up next. Shinji Hirako is the captain of Squad 5, as he was over 100 years prior before being stripped of the rank. Shinji is certainly a very strong captain, not only strong but wise to match, as he is definitely a man with a lot of experience under his belt. His Shikai ability is also a really tricky one to come up against, as it utilizes the power of illusion. When the sword is spun, it creates a mist that places its victims into an optical illusion where all of their movements are reversed. Not only direction, but perception is affected too, as we saw in his face-off with Eisen in the fake Karakura Town arc, where we saw that he had caught Eisen totally off guard, leaving him confused, and Shinji was even able to strike him with his Zanpaku toe. Obviously, this wasn't enough to take down Eisen, as the difference in their skill sets at this time were just far too great. But the fact that he managed to do this at that time really does showcase to us just how impressive and powerful Shinji is. Shinji, as a Vizard, also has holification powers that will greatly enhance his abilities, that being his speed, strength, endurance, but as well as that, his holification gives Shinji the ability to fire off a very powerful Seto blast. Shinji can also maintain his holo mask for 5 minutes at a time. So easily the strongest of the Visored captains and very deserving of his reinstation as Squad 5's captain. We have never seen his Bankai. We know he has the ability to use it, but not what it does. If it's anything like the ability his Shikai possesses, then you bet Shinji could climb up a few places higher on this list. Gin Ichimaru was the former 3rd Division captain prior to his betrayal of the Soul Society alongside both Kaname Tozen and Sosuke Eisen. Gin was hailed as a child genius as he was extremely proficient and graduated from the Shinigami Academy in just a single year. Not long after that, he gained a seated position. This praise and high expectancy for his talent was certainly not wasted as Gin became a very strong Shinigami. Gin just has everything you would expect of a powerful captain of the Gotei 13. He is strong, has a mastery of his Zanpakuto, a keen intellect, as well as a large spiritual pressure. But where Gin really shines is in his calm-headed nature and mastery of both manipulation and deception. Gin remains calm at all times and is rarely ever taken back by his opponent's movesets and abilities. He instead toys with his opponents, utilizing psychological warfare, weakening both their mind and resolve in order to give him the advantage. His Zanpakuto Shinso is amazing in its abilities, where it can extend or retract, giving Gin the best possible position when in combat. Now, his Zanpakuto's deadliest ability is in its Bankai, with the ability named Kurose Kamishini no Yari, in which he can turn his Zanpakuto into a dust when it is extending and retracting that will find its way into his opponent's body and at his command will break down that person's cells from the inside. Gin played the game and waited for his moment to make his move on Eisen using Kamishini no Yari to stop him and take the Hogyoku. Gin was successful, but only for a brief moment, but he certainly pulled off a huge move here. Gin was a very strong Shinigami. Now, I only wish we got to see more of him and his abilities in the series. He was easily one of the strongest and fastest long-range fighters in the Gotei 13, and his Bankai's true ability was one that really gave Gin a deserved high place on this list. Isshin Kurosaki was the former 10th Division captain and a very strong and very dangerous captain to come against. Isshin was an absolute powerhouse and had it all: enhanced strength and speed, an amazing amount of spiritual energy, and a Zanpakuto that could stand up against anyone. The man just has an absolute presence about him, and when he is on the battlefield, he is an opponent not to be taken lightly. Now, with just the single flick of a finger, Isshin managed to send Eisen flying through a good few buildings, a move that he calls Oni Dekopin. His Zanpakuto and its Shikai came with some pretty OP abilities too. We saw him use Engetsu's ability to deal a huge amount of destructive power if he was to spit his own blood onto the sword. We also saw him use an insanely powerful Getsuga Tensho against Eisen that split him straight down the middle. Now, Isshin is definitely rusty in the fights we have seen him in, and that's due to the fact that he hasn't been a Shinigami in a very long time. As a former captain and head of one of the 5 noble houses, we know that he possessed a huge amount of power. Like, he is powerful now, but back then he was even stronger. We also know that he does have Bankai, but because of the strain that it puts on his body and the fact that Ishin can no longer easily fix his spiritual energy, we have never seen him use it, but we can only imagine at just how insane his Bankai would be. And for me, a full-powered Ishin of the past would probably make it into the top 5, but because of how he is now, he will remain just outside of the top 10. But man, what an amazing captain he is in terms of raw power. Next up, we are into the top 10 and we have another child prodigy and the youngest Shinigami to become a captain of the Gotei 13. None other than Toshiro Hisagaya, captain of the 10th Division. Hisagaya is an excellent captain and commander. He is probably the captain we have seen in combat the most and has an impressive set of wins under his belt. As a captain, Hisagaya of course has all the tributes you'd expect a captain to have, but one of his strongest is that of his keen intellect, instinct, and intuition. Sometimes he can be a bit ruthless in his way of thinking, but this is all due to his age and experience compared to the other captains. As well as this, we have seen him lose himself to his emotions where other captains would have remained calm and collected. Nonetheless, Hisagaya has proved that he can get the job done on many an occasion. Now, being the youngest ever captain in the Gotei 13, Hisagaya is also the youngest to achieve Bankai. His power is the manipulation of both ice and water, something that he has demonstrated a high level of mastery at. However, even though these skills and power are displayed, due to his age, his Bankai hasn't matured properly yet. Despite this, we have seen him use a large amount of abilities. In fact, he may have the most we have seen in the show, to be honest. His most notable fights were against Espada Tier Haribel, where he really showed off the fact that his age and experience wasn't a problem. Of course, not an easy battle in the slightest, but one that really did highlight what he is capable of. After the final battle against Eisen, Hisagaya spent 18 months developing, training, and strengthening his Bankai. During the 1000-year Blood War arc, Hisagaya fought against Gerard Valkyrie, and we got to see the results of said training, that being Daiguren Hyarinmaru. Hisagaya is definitely deserving of such a high place on this list, and again, due to his age, we know that he is only going to improve and get stronger, so it'll be interesting to see where he will eventually end up in a weakest to strongest list, but for now, he stands very, very proudly here. The number 9 spot goes to the former 13th Division captain, Jushiro Ukitake. Ikitake is the image of a calm, collected serenity, but that appearance should not fool you, as this man is as deadly a warrior as they come. He is an absolute master of Kido. In fact, his mastery of it has immensely enhanced all of his abilities to a very impressive level. We saw just how impressive a swordsman he was when he teamed up with Shunsui to take on none other than the headmaster Yamamoto himself. Now, the battle ended in a draw, with Yamamoto surely coming out as the victor, but he and Shunsui earned well-respected and deserved praise from their master. One of which being his Zanpakuto. Ukitake has the best defense of any of the captains due to the ability of his Shikai. This allows him to split his Zanpakuto into 2 separate blades and absorb the attack coming at him. The power of their attack travels through a rope connecting the blades at their hilts, where Ukitake will fire it right back at them with much more power than the original attack had. Super impressive move, and one we saw him use in the battle against the Espada Stark. Now, Ikitake was unfortunately plagued with a deadly illness, so we never really got to see him at his full potential, and with that we never saw what the power of his Bankai was. But from what we did see of him, we were all very well aware at just how powerful a captain he was. Again, he is another case where I could very well see him being higher on the list if we knew what his full potential was, but let's face it, top 10 is still a very impressive feat. Next up, we have the former captain of the 2nd Division and commander of the Stealth Force, Yorichi Shihoin. We spoke earlier in the video that the current captain of the 2nd Division and commander of the Stealth Force, Soifone, was only second to one other, and that one other is without a doubt Yorichi. She is utterly amazing and the true master of assassination. She just has all the attributes you'd expect of a person in this role, but what makes Yorichi that much more impressive is her flash step. It is that impressive that she holds the title of Flash Goddess or Flash Master. She can move at great distances in the blink of an eye, making it impossible for her opponent to keep up. She has mastered the flash step to the point where it appears that she is in multiple places at once, wiping out entire squads in a matter of seconds. Just as Soifone has the Shunko ability, as does Yorichi, but hers is far more advanced and, more importantly, controlled. We saw in her battle against Soifone the difference in its use, and as the series has gone on, we have seen it evolve further with her Thunder God battle form as well as her Thunder Beast battle form. Now, Yorichi does have a Zanpakuto, but she rarely ever uses it, as she prefers to fight in a hand-to-hand combat style. She is without a doubt one of the strongest unarmed users in all of Bleach, so we can understand her reasoning behind not using her Zanpakuto. 7th spot goes to none other than Biochi Kuchiki. He is the captain of the 6th Division and the 28th head of the Kuchiki clan. Biochi is one of the strongest captains in Bleach, no question about it. In fact, he was one of the first captains we saw in the series and a true indication at the immense power that these captains have. Now, one of the things that stands out about Biochi is his incredible speed using the flash step technique, which was taught to him by Yorichi. His favorite and a very, very devastating ability is called Senka, where he moves at his opponent's back, directly attacking and sealing their Seketsu and Hakusui in 2 very rapid and devastating strikes. These strikes cut off his victim's spiritual energy flow. Now, this was what he used on Ichigo in the very early stages of the story when Byakuya's character was introduced to us. Flash step aside, Byakuya easily has one of the most unique, beautiful, and truly terrifying Zanpakuto in all of Bleach, called Zenbon Zakura. Its Shikai and Bankai utilize tiny petals that cause devastating slashes to his enemy. It's an utterly overwhelming technique that many of his victims have fallen prey to. Now, movesets aside, Byakuya is probably the master of calm and calculated decisions without any hesitation. When he fought against the Espada's Amari, Byakuya lost control of his left leg due to the Espada's power of being able to control whatever it is his eyes gaze upon. Without a second of hesitation, Byakuya cut the tendons of his left leg so it was unable to be used against him. It's those kind of decisions that set him apart from the rest, and the fact that he truly has the speed and power to back it up, making Byakuya one of the strongest characters in the entire series. Next up is the former 4th Division captain, Retsu Unohana. She was one of the eldest and most experienced Gotei 13 captains and was the best healer in all of the Soul Society. Now, she was pretty much used or only ever seen as a healer in the show, so to those who don't know about Unohana, this placement will come as a surprise, and just to warn you again, spoilers here. So it wasn't until the 1,000-year Blood War arc that we truly got to see just how strong and terrifying Unohana really was. So she was to teach 11th Division Captain Kenpachi Zaraki Zanjutsu. In order to teach Kenpachi how to become stronger, the two engaged in a battle to the death. And we find out a couple of things in this fight. So, Unohana was once the most diabolical criminal in all of the Soul Society. Yamamoto actually sought her out when he was putting the Gotei 13 together, and she became the first captain of the 11th Division, as well as the first Kenpachi. During a mission, she came across a boy who attacked her on sight, and the two went on to fight. That boy was none other than a young Kenpachi Zaraki. During their battle, Kenpachi himself admitted that it was the first time that he had felt fear in a battle. Ever since their first fight, he wanted more, as he loved this feeling when fighting. This speaks volumes to how much of a strong opponent Unohana is, if Kenpachi was to say this. Now, the fight between the two was truly great, and we really got to see this new side to Unohana, as well as the impressive power that she possessed. One of the great mysteries about Unohana was her Bankai. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot known about it, as she was slain before we could really see what it was capable of. We only know a few things, such as when her Bankai is released, the blade of her Zanpaku toe turns into a thick, dark red liquid that flows all around her, which many have theorized is blood, but there is no confirmation of that. The liquid of her Bankai is that of a very strong acid, strong enough to melt an opponent to the very bone, as we saw with Kenpachi. Other than that, I think there was still so much more to her than we ever saw, but from what we did see and find out about Unohana, she is clearly very deserving of this spot on the list. Okay, top 5 now, and in 5th spot is none other than the absolute brute force that is Kenpachi Zaraki, 11th Division Captain. So, where to start with Kenpachi? So, the guy is just an absolute force and a master of combat. Now, when I say a master of combat, I really do mean master, as he lives and breathes battle. His whole sole driving force is just battle and to become stronger, so naturally one of the things that comes with that lifestyle is of course a ton of experience. Now, the other captains tend to keep him at arm's length, and I always get those kind of outsider vibes when it comes to him. We know just how strong the captains are, but they have chosen words such as supernatural and immeasurable to describe Zaraki's power. Now, going back to his battle against Unohana prior to becoming a division captain when he was young, she herself mentioned that despite being the one left standing in their fight, she knew that he was stronger and better suited to become Kenpachi. Kenpachi himself has always had untapped potential, and he had never bothered to try and tap into it due to the fact that he was scared that his fights would be over far too quickly if he were to try and tap into his true power and potential. As such, his eye patch seals his overflowing and intense spiritual power, just so that he can indulge in his love of combat, but he has removed it in a couple of fights, and man was it truly a sight to behold when he did that. The guy was next to unstoppable. His Bankai also matches this same sealed theme, in which he will transform into a berserker demon when he activates his Bankai. However, this is at the cost of his own sense of reason. Kenpachi is just so incredibly powerful, and there are very few who can beat him at his best, which is why he takes the 5th spot on this list. Taking the 4th spot is the man, the myth, the legend, that is Kisuke Urahara. Kisuke was the former 12th Division captain and president of the Shinigami Research Institute, and man is this guy impressive. Urahara is without a doubt arguably the smartest character in the entire series. He is a master strategist and tactician, as well as a keen inventor that has gone on to conjure some of the most unique and powerful items, with the most devastating being the Hogyoku. Now, he isn't just smart, as he is an expert in unarmed and armed combat, as well as being very experienced in Kido use. His mastery of Kido has not only allowed him to be able to perform high-level Kido, but he has also created some high-level Kido himself, which is a feat that speaks 1,000 words into the absolute brilliance of this man. Now, it's his Zanpakuto, particularly his Bankai, that ranks Urahara as one of the strongest captains, or characters for that matter, in the entire series. So, his Bankai summons a crimson-dressed giant woman that gives Kisuke the ability to tear apart and restitch anything that he so chooses. Things such as the terrain he is fighting in, he can increase the strength of his muscles or even heal himself from injury, as we saw in his fight against Askin. No one is invulnerable, of course, but Urahara is pretty close with the power of his Bankai. So, it goes without saying, not only is Urahara one of the most important characters in the series, but also one of the strongest, to which easily gives him this 4th space in the list that is getting, pretty insane with its personnel at this point. The current commander of the Gotei 13 and 1st Division captain, Shunsui Kuroko, is taking 3rd place, and man, is this guy impressive. Shunsui is what you would call the complete package. Yes, all the captains on this list share very similar traits in terms of being masters of swordsmanship, etc. But Shunsui, he's just on a completely different level across all fields. And it's because of this that it is near impossible to defeat this man in combat, for he is just too powerful. So his Zanpakuto is equally as impressive, as its personality is unlike any other Zanpakuto. His Zanpakuto's personality only comes to light in battle and will only let Shunsui fight at his full power when it is in the mood for it. And if you wanted a clear example of just how powerful he is, then here we go. So Shunsui took out the 1st ranked Espada stock, only using his Shikai. Bruh, not only is this a flex on Shunsui's abilities, but also a nod to the terrifying power of his Bankai that Shunsui himself refuses to use unless it's absolutely necessary. Reason being is when he releases his Bankai, an aura covers the area around Shunsui. This aura changes the perception of a person's surrounding environment and causes those trapped within its range to feel despair and sadness. His Bankai causes mental despair and the effects of death, and because its effects affect everything and everyone within its range, Shunsui does not want to gamble with innocent or allied forces who may be trapped within its boundary. Now, it's his Bankai combined with just how strong he is when he is not using it that confirms to us that Shunsui Kuroko is one of the strongest Shinigami in all of existence. Coming in at 2nd is none other than Sosuke Eisen, former 5th Division captain and a man that pretty much attained godlike status after he betrayed the Soul Society. Eisen has so much spiritual energy that most in the series can't even comprehend just how powerful he really is. Eisen was pretty much an immortal being who could take down any and everything he wanted, and you know what? I'm sure even a deity wouldn't have been out of his reach. Now, when it comes to his time as a captain, Eisen was without a doubt on his way to becoming one of the strongest in the entire series. He was one of the strongest swordsmen in the Gotei 13 and was also one of their greatest military strategists. And that's the scary thing about Eisen. His mind is pretty much as powerful as his strength is. Eisen is a genius. His intellect is just unmatched. But he also uses his genius for manipulation. Eisen is extremely cunning and has betrayed so many that have fallen into the trap of trusting him. And when it comes to his power, the best way to understand just how strong he is to look at the battles that he has fought and won. Well, Eisen basically took on the entire Gotei 13 and the Vizards and came out of it as the victor. If that wasn't enough to convince you, then look at the time that he also went against the powerhouse trio of Isshin Kurosaki, Yorichi Shihoin, and Kisuke Urahara, and again, came out on top. Eisen is just absolutely insane. The man is pretty much unbeatable if it wasn't for, of course, Ichigo sacrificing his spiritual powers to use Mugetsu. If he hadn't have done this, Eisen would surely have gone on to have either destroyed or ruled over the entire world. First place goes to the absolute legend and beast mode captain that is none other than the former commander and founder of the Gotei 13 and 1st Division captain, Usami Yamamoto. Yamamoto is just next level power and someone who you just have no hope of besting. In fact, he served as the Gotei 13's commander for over 1,000 years due to the fact that there was just no other Shinigami that was stronger than him. Despite his old age, he was a master of everything and even wielded the oldest Zanpakuto. A Zanpakuto that was so powerful that it was stronger than all of the other Zanpakuto in the Soul Society combined. Yes, combined. And his Shikai release command alone just lets you know how much of a beast mode powerhouse beefcake this guy is. Man, I'm talking all things in the universe turn to ashes. I mean, come on, you do not get any more than that. That there is the highest level. Nothing more can top that. You don't go any higher than that. Now, speaking of his Shikai and Bankai, the power they wield is almost disgusting. You know, the flames they emit cut or burn everything out of existence. Again, if that doesn't sound super OP to you, then I honestly don't know what else does. His Bankai also comes with some nasty abilities, with one of them being able to summon the Fallen at his hand. So not only can he summon those he has defeated, but he can also choose who it is that he summons, meaning that this powerhouse can defeat whoever he wants and then just summon them to fight alongside him. Yama, please, just stop. Honestly, I could just go on for an eternity about how strong Yamamoto is and why I am so apparently in love with his power, but just know that there is no captain that has any hope of getting anywhere near this man's power. He is number one, always has been, always will be. And that is it, every captain ranked from weakest to strongest. We certainly hope that you enjoyed this ranking as it really was a lot of fun to make. So we just want to say a quick thank you for all of the support on the Bleach content on the channel thus far. It's been an absolute privilege to bring these videos to you. Definitely make sure to let us know you made it to the end of the video by telling us in the comments if you agreed with our ranking and how you would rank the captains. Also, just give old man Yama some more love. I don't think I did enough. I don't. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more Bleach videos on the channel, make sure to let us know by smashing that like button, Getsuga Tensho style. If you haven't, make this the video you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications or you will miss future Anime Uproar videos. Remember, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar. Thanks again, and we honestly really can't wait to see you in the next video. Till next time, friends. Peace!